Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am very aware that I look like some sort of cowboy tribute act right now, but I've put it on. Ben is looking like a gorgeous, free-flowing country singer as well. So simultaneously, we're looking pretty good together. How are you doing at 4:30 this evening? What is going on in your world? Let us know in the comment section below. And I am joined absolutely. I messaged Ben a couple of times and it just didn't quite work out. And we'd done stuff beforehand, but I am always delighted. This man must get so many requests to come on at least the EFL channels, at least. But I'm delighted to be joined by the fantastic Benjamin Bloom. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. I thought you were going to go with like kids TV presenter with the penguin, To be honest, I've got a pretty snappy shirt on, but it's a bit too cold to just throw on the first jumper. But
it sort of gives Christmas vibes, Ben. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. To be fair, there is snow, but come one, come all. A good jumper is a good jumper for life, not just for Christmas. Yeah,
that's true. That is true. How's it going anyway, mate? How's it going in this EFL? I think last time we spoke, it was, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago. It was very tight between the top two. Well, sort of between there was 4 or 5 teams at that point. Leeds have sort of made the way up and it's sort of changed a little bit. The bottom, mate, I was doing a shoot the other day with Green King. And they were doing a relegation conversation. I swear to God, there must have been 10 teams there. All the way down Swansea onwards. There was so many teams there. It's the Championship. It's been drama, hasn't it? It's been entertainment so far.
Yeah, and kind of putting on my trends and patterns and numbers hat, you're kind of looking at, I think it's pretty well acknowledged that I think Coventry is still projecting under 70 points for 5th, which is low. That is an open door for someone to get into the playoffs. And then it's weird because then the points have kind of gone down at the bottom, but then you've got that 5-point gap between Luton and Cardiff, where if you look, everyone above the drop zone is projecting to be above 46 points, which is high. So it kind of tells us the top 4 have been really good. The playoff race for 5th and 6th is not great and is an open door. And either we get a high tide for relegation, Conor, or we get a Barnsley, Derby, Peterborough where there's a gap and they're gone with a couple of games to go. But that Luton win does give some credence to the idea that we might get at least one of them, Serge.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like that. It feels like it's completely open. And obviously last night, Hull blowing sort of that relegation picture out of the water, a Joffy Gelhardt goal as well, of which was massive for him. And obviously then beating Plymouth 2-0. And I mean, just let's look at the bottom, Ben. Not on the rap sheet. And this is classic Conor McGilligan content. Not on the rap sheet. What are you looking at, mate, towards the bottom of the table? I've done stuff on a similar program to what you've been on, The Sportsman, and I've spoken about my relegation picture. I think it was Hull, Luton, Plymouth, I think I said. Hull, Luton, Plymouth. Yeah, I think that was my 3. It is suddenly all up for grabs, isn't it? I mean, there's so many teams who are down there.
Well, I mean, the big outlier is you look at Portsmouth and you look at Oxford, and that's 2 League One teams. Neither of them look like they're going to drop. Obviously, Oxford had the mother of all new manager bounces under Gary Rowett. And if you're looking at, I do think it's going to be more than 45. It's normally 45 is like the 10-year average generally most years when you look at it, roll the 10-year average. So Oxford need 2 more wins in 11 games to get to take to 44. And Portsmouth, if you take Portsmouth's first 8-9 games out, where to be fair to them, they had injuries and they played like the entire like top 9 teams in the first 9 games or whatever.
Mate, we know, we're very well aware.
Yeah, exactly. They're basically a mid-table team since then. So that makes it very interesting down there. Then, and this is unfortunate for the teams in the bottom 3, you have the likes of Hull and Stoke, where everybody is like, well, their squads are too good for them to drop. Eustace looks like he's completely mistimed this at Derby in terms of them being, I mean, that doesn't look good. They're not scoring, they're not winning. They've got 29 points. Plymouth had a little splurge. So right now, you think Luton might be able to make something happen. But would I be surprised if that? I mean, again, looking at it, how many points if Cardiff win 3 games out of 11, they're at 45, which makes it pretty tricky. Luton to get to 46, for example, is 15 points from 11 games when their last fit. So I don't know. It looks like it could be very interesting, but could be very boring.
Well, as well, like I mean, I watched. I don't know what your thoughts were there, Ben, but I watched Cardiff Burnley last night. I don't know if you either watched it, caught the extended highlight. It honestly, mate, in the second half of that game, Cardiff were fantastic and they were really unlucky. Selleck up front was, by the way, he looks like some talent. I mean, Callum Robinson wasn't on the field until
he was 3 or 4 million, Conor. When you look at the numbers,
yeah,
he wasn't cheap. Yeah,
and he looked excellent. Really, really unlucky with 2 opportunities: one at the post, one at the bar. And they brought Callum Robinson on with about 20 minutes to go. And I thought, you've done that too late. You've done that too late with the technical ability of Callum Robinson at this level. Obviously, the return they've had as well with Callum Robinson in that Cardiff side. And I thought to myself, that was a real opportunity, and they were unlucky. I think Burnley fans were quite, excited with the fact they got out there with maximum points. But you are looking at it, and you are quite right, Ben. I mean, 21st Cardiff. What has happened with Luton? That is I can't get my head around it. I had them winning the league, Ben. I had them winning the league.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I think I had them 3rd or 4th. Yeah.
Up front, I had them winning the league. I thought the players coming down could acclimatise. Adebayo, Morris, I thought Alfie Doherty, the 3 sort of key ones in that. Obviously, you're looking at Tom Lockyer potentially getting a full season. That didn't happen, of course. Chong, huge at this level. It's crazy, isn't it, mate? It's crazy what the Championship can do to some teams.
Well, and that goes into one of my great soapboxes, which I promise I won't go on, but the broader picture of their stupid system that we work in. So Luton went up and didn't dare to spend every single penny of the ridiculous jump in TV money that they've got, because they wanted to be kind of prudent and, invest it in a football stadium down the line. They come down, they don't have massive assets to sell. They don't do the normal parachute payment, kind of horrible first transfer window where you have to, basically set the club up for the next year or two. It's just, completely nosedived. And, my club, Ipswich, a lot of people say, oh, big spend in the summer. But you then look at Luton, who didn't do a big spend, and you think, you kind of got to when you go up there, because not only does it affect you in the Premier League, apparently affects you when you come down again.
It does, yeah. Just a quick word on them, Ben. This isn't following any sort of pattern in terms of order, but it's so interesting, isn't it, when it comes to Ipswich? And I did want to speak to you about this, to be honest with you, and the investment that Ipswich have made. I mean, theoretically, they've moved from a League One outfit to a Premier League outfit extremely quickly.
A bad League One outfit as well.
and true, 100%. And McKenna's done an unbelievable job. And you've as an Ipswich fan, you've got to think to yourself, you're coming down to the Championship, you're going to have some serious assets when you look at that squad in terms of the ones that are going to stick around. But you've also got to think to yourself, the likes of Liam Delap, you can sell for a mass amount of money there with sort of the return. Worst case scenario, this is if Ipswich go down, by the way, but if Ipswich is to go down, they're in a pretty good position, aren't they, going back into the Championship? And you can't, I guess there's not that much uncertainty with Ipswich coming down. I mean, what's the overarching thoughts on that side?
I guess the uncertainty is if the manager goes, which would be a problem. But then, like you say, even if they sell, the kind of theory we've discussed from the Ipswich view is that it will be Delap plus whoever the first big offer comes in, Leif Davis or Jacob Greaves. Or do you know what? Dara O'Shea actually is a Premier League defender, and he's only 25. And I know he's been relegated with Burnley, and he might be about to get relegated with Ipswich. But you could see a Brentford or a Brighton, and if it's Brentford or Brighton, it's 30 million straight off, don't you? So we think the Delap plus the next next one off the rank is probably all they'll need to sell. But yeah, I mean, if you talk big picture that you have a takeover in League One, you have a unicorn manager, you go back-to-back promotions, and then a few years later you have a parachute payment and a squad that's 10,000 times better than, you know, the one that Paul Cook had in League One. You can't grumble, even though we try.
That's the thing, isn't it? It feels like now, especially with the position that you were in, you have got to go up and almost accept the fact. Ben, I don't know if you saw, but I did speak to your chairman in Miami.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I managed to grapple him for an interview, and he's very, very positive. Seems like a really measured guy as well. You come back down, worst case scenario, but you have, especially with the parachute payments, and look, you'd rather be in it, wouldn't you, Ben? We know it, the trickle down effect. The trickle down effect is not good, but you would rather be in it. You'd rather be in the conversation, and you can then experience as a football fan potentially even a better season, maybe the last time out, recruit really well, and then go again. And it feels like, Ben, for the majority of clubs, that's got to be the way around it, hasn't it?
Well, and you know, Fulham came down, had a 90 million quid wage bill in the Championship, and go figure, that sustains them in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Forest, to be fair, Bournemouth, the last couple of years, exceptional. You got to say fair play there. They've kind of bucked it. But Forest had to breach FFP because, similar to Ipswich, they hadn't, you know, everyone lauds Brentford and Brighton, rightly so. But you have to have a bit of pain and losing the playoffs a few times to build a team in League One. And even like Middlesbrough and Coventry, when they built really good teams and lost in the playoffs. Nowadays, with the gap between, if you're a non-parachute team who loses in the playoffs, you just get pillaged. Yeah. All your good players are just going to get taken off you by lower ranking Premier League teams or parachute teams who have got either twice as much money as you or 10 times as much money as you. So it's difficult. I remember, Conor, it always used to be that West Brom, the model, I think Burnley did it the first time under Sean Dyche before the parachutes got completely ridiculous. But go up, get paid, come down, sell a couple, go up and you're better. It's just that ticking clock of doom that all you Leeds fans will know about. That it's nice to have the parachute payments, but you are in trouble if they run out.
Yeah, you 100% are. You're right, and I think that's the thing. That's maybe the panic of this season. Just get up. Just get up as quickly as you can. You do not want to be in that third year, and you do not want to be in a situation right now where, you know, or next season at least, where you're facing up against, we don't want that scenario again, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich, who are going to be a hell of a lot stronger, even with what they were. They're going to be a bit more of a gargantuan.
Well, Leicester might actually get their -6 this time.
Oh, yeah, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. But to what you were saying, you know, you look at like a Sunderland, and I think me and you have both been massively impressed with a Sunderland this season. Hugely impressed. And you look at some of their best players. You look at Isidore, they brought in for 3 million quid. You look at Trey Hume at the back. You look at maybe Dennis Sirkin. You look at Joe Bellingham. They're going to be picked off, aren't they, Ben? And that's where I guess that's where you've got to. This is worst case scenario if Sunderland were to get promoted, but best case scenario in that sort of situation, you think, well, we've got a really good recruitment sort of perspective, which they have right now. They go through a betting company, which is very similar to what Brentford did and do. And it feels very much like, you know, you've kind of got to rely on that a little bit, and the evidence has got to be the proof.
Yeah, and Sunderland is such an extreme example of it, because it's not like they sign 2 or 3 young players. They literally only sign young players. And I've said it a million times, you know, okay, they signed Alan Brown, who is exactly the antidote, signed someone who's played 5,000, you know, championship games or whatever. But I suppose the thing for Sunderland, compared to the Middlesbrough and Coventry examples I referenced, at Coventry, there was 2 massively cheat code players, Hamer and Gyökeres, and they both go, and it's okay. Middlesbrough as well had Giles on loan, Ramsey on loan, and once Akpom was signed, it's like the way it goes. Whereas fair play to Sunderland, if Chris Rigg goes to Arsenal for 45 million or whatever, or Joe Bellingham goes to Real Madrid for 68 million, or I don't know.
Oh, wow.
No, just random numbers. But there's plenty there, isn't there? Plenty there.
There is, yeah, and it feels like at some point, Ben, with Sunderland in particular, there's going to be a point of which it's all going to click. And they've been so good. And look, I mean, for goodness sake, we're talking as if they're miles behind, but I think it's just maybe a little bit too far right now. But it feels like
against the three squads above them, Conor, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and it feels like with that recruitment backing that they have, obviously facilitated by Speakman and co. At some point, are you of the opinion that it's going to sort of click with Sunderland? It's going to work, the investment and how many sort of tick boxes they've got in that squad?
I hope for their sake it does. The issue is looks like they're going to be going up against three yo-yo-y teams that have 5 times more broadcast money than every season. So you just have to have a complete freak season like Ipswich did, where you can just get ahead, and the one season where everything's together, you get promoted, or you've got to hope that a couple of them crap the bed like Norwich and Watford did. So the season where Luton got up, Norwich and Watford both were miles off it, which then opened the playoffs up for everybody. The top two still were Burnley and Sheffield United, weren't they? So, you just got to hope it falls for you, or God forbid we can clean up this system and, teams that actually recruit well and have good managers have a chance of getting promoted rather than, just the massive chasms we got.
No, you bang on, mate. I think that's sort of it's a separate video, that, isn't it? Talking about the English pyramid and the trickle down effect. But right, promotion picture. It's all of a sudden, it's seeming to get a little bit more nervy across
Not clearer.
the board. Yeah, definitely a lot clearer. Leeds have got to, obviously Leeds dropping those points against West Bromwich Albion, Ben. It feels like, bizarrely, after the run that we've been on, one loss in 22 in the league, it feels like all of a sudden, with Burnley winning last night and Sheffield United potentially being on, I believe it's the same points by the time we next play. If I think it's Burnley beat Luton, Sheffield United beat Preston, which, okay, let's give it to them. They do this, it's based on likelihoods. The sort of 2 points separating the three sides. It stinks of not only a close affair, but an immediate reaction at Portsmouth needed. From Leeds United. Yeah, very tricky indeed. So suddenly, from a perspective of Leeds United being almost home and hosed, Ben, to a certain extent, the as much as you can get in the Championship, it feels like all of a sudden it's bunched up a little bit, doesn't it? And maybe the psychological impact's going to be tested a bit.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a you're in the tribe there as a Leeds fan. I think there's a bit of that speaking from the outside. I'd be a lot more calm about Leeds for sure, because not just the fact they beat Sunderland and Sheffield United back to back, the way they beat them as well. Although you would have almost preferred that was rounds 45 and 46. Yeah. What a way to go up that would be. By the way, but no, I still look at it, and although people will give me the league table's the only thing that matters, there's a hell of a lot of data and evidence that says Leeds are better than Sheffield United and Burnley. And really, particularly in Sheffield United's case, they've done a hell of a job to be within 3 points and to go, could go level before the next game. Sheffield United have won 13 games by a single goal this season. They know how to win. The manager's doing a fine job. And then you look at Leeds, and long unbeaten run, never lose at home, look really smooth, look really calm. The manager heart rate doesn't go above whatever unless you beat Sunderland in the 95th minute. And yet it's still 3 points, isn't it? Yeah. Which kind of maybe goes back a little bit to the conversation we were just having, that the opposition, you can still rack up 73 points because of the advantage you've got over the opposition, whether you're as good as the team that's one place above you or not. It's definitely swung massively in Leeds' favour with the two head-to-head wins. And you cannot ignore the fact that Leeds have already played home and away the entirety. I suppose Bristol City moved a place now, but going into the midweek round, it was the entire top 7 Leeds have played home and away. So other than the news that Ampadu's going to be out for a while, there is no bad news for Leeds. They drew a game against West Brom, and it was a bit flat, and they were a bit knackered, and it was what it was. And you can't win every week.
I thought they were good, Ben. Ben, I thought they were good. I thought they
Leeds
were really
or West Brom?
West Brom. I thought they were very good.
They've got. And what's interesting, Conor, is that is not the pattern of an Elland Road EFL Championship 24-25 game, because they actually counter-attacked a bit. They actually moved the ball. Yeah. And you guys who are season ticket holders at Leeds have got used to, right, which low block are we facing today? And I've got nothing against the team that goes away to the league leaders and, tries to draw the game 0-0 and nick something up. Sunderland did it, for God's sake, and they're really good. So, I think West Brom is a unique challenge in Leeds' run-in, and it's going to go back to Portsmouth. Will be interesting because they get the ball in the box. They've got some good attackers. Fratton's always, difficult place to go, isn't it? But it's easier for me to say. You should have seen me watching Ipswich go to Coventry on that in between round 45 and round 46.
I remember it.
That game lasted 7 hours, mate. So I get it from your point of view, but I'm pretty calm on the fact that Leeds will finish first.
Really? Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think the underlying metrics, and I've become a bit of a data head, and the underlying metrics kind of put Leeds at the top of absolutely everything. When it comes to XG, touching the
clean sheets. Well done, Burnley.
Yeah, but in all fairness, Ben, with how insane their defensive record has been, Burnley, and I completely get this. I did a combined 11 the other day just on a shoot I was doing. I'm pretty sure I put 2 or 3 Leeds players in there, and that's genuinely not from a deluded perspective, but it's from a perspective of, I think Ilan Mele has cost us a lot this season. I'll be honest with you, and I think without him, we're talking about, and I think me and you said it before, and I maybe made an outlandish claim of it being the same as Burnley's, and it wouldn't have been the same, but my goodness, it'd have been close. It'd have been very close. I just feel like the amount of maybe goals chucked in by the goalkeeper has been gargantuan, to be honest. And actually, on a whole, the Leeds United defence has been better than what the stats make up it, You're
totally right, mate. They're actually, and Sheffield United as well. I think Burnley just confuses us all because it's such a ridiculous number. Leeds have got 20 clean sheets and Sheffield United have got 18. They've all been really good defensively, the top 3, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, and Burnley have been excellent. I mean, I wanted to touch on as well a player that's come in at Burnley as well. I know we're kind of chopping all over the place here, Ben, but a player that's come in, and we're talking. We've discussed previously Burnley's results. 0-0, 1-1, 1-0, but the majority. I mean, they haven't been 1-1 really, have they? They've not conceded a goal in about 400 years, but. Overall, it feels like Marcus Edwards has come in and maybe given them a little bit more of a dimension. I know they're looking at him almost in the Enzo Lefebvre bracket of just a ridiculous signing at this level. I mean, is there potential that the breach of the top 2 is Burnley maybe getting in there and Sheffield United forsaking their place for literally just a player of that ilk in the January transfer window coming in?
Could be. Yeah, could be. It's difficult because Burnley have good, tricky attacking players. I mean, I know Jadon Anthony wasn't, the greatest loan signing at Leeds. Didn't really get in, did he? But the problem is that if they are one-paced and overly methodical to the point people say they are, then you can stop. Like for example, when Farke had Buendia, go ahead, stick 2 men on him. Good luck getting near him. Do you know what I mean? Because the rotation and all the other threats, you're still going to lose, whereas it does feel a little bit like, can you do a man marking job on a slow-paced Burnley team obsessed with clean sheets? Maybe you can, but I forget which the game was. He had a real stunner of a game, didn't he, a couple of rounds back. So, yeah, there's something about that Sheffield United team though this season. Like I said, Wilder seems like the old Wilder. 13 wins by a single. Yeah, especially.
Ben. I think it's because Leeds are there as well.
probably doesn't help with his motivation, does it? Yeah. But the way I'm seeing it, it's very easy to say with 35 games of info is that the decision is who finishes second and who finishes third. It feels like Sunderland won't finish in the top three, and it feels like second place will either be Sheffield United or Burnley, in my humble opinion. That's where I am with it. And I know I hear from Leeds fans, "Oh, Ben, you don't understand. You don't understand." You know,
you
if
do.
anyone,
you're kind of like you're kind of obviously content wise, but in general, Ben, I feel you've got a lot of apathy for Leeds United. So we kind of take you in as one of our own.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And they've thrown away things. I do think you shouldn't mistake last year that forget I'm an Ipswich fan. Ipswich, that was a freak season for Ipswich last season. That is, you can talk about, Leeds tailed off or whatever, but it just isn't going to happen again that the team who finishes second in League One scores 96 points and you don't go up with 90 or whatever it was. So, I get it. I get it. But look at the recent run. Look how smooth it's been. Look at the underlying data. Look at the opponents coming up. Look at the fact that the guy in the dugouts won 2 championship titles before as well. And Conor, yes, I know Melié's thrown a few in. You're struggling for a weak link in that team. And also, when I look at the wide guys, I mean, you've done it without a regular number 9. He doesn't totally trust Pirro, even though his goals total's really good. And, Willy Gnonto is a impact sub who would get in every other 11 anyway, wouldn't he?
He would indeed. Mental state then. So we got to this point last season, around about 11 games left. I think Leeds won 3 and 11. We really, really struggled. It sort of literally, coining the song, it all sort of fell apart. Why is that? Why, from your perspective, from an outside, non-bias, subjective standpoint, why is that not going to happen again?
I don't think it's a apples to apples comparison, this one to last year. I reiterate the point about there's no Ipswich freak show team. That could have been Sunderland, but they're too many points behind now. B, there was an over-reliance on 2 very young players in Ruter and Somerville, who were absolutely fantastic. But we all knew what was coming when the ball was over on the right-hand side last season. It's like, right, how quickly can you switch it to Somerville? And he's one-on-one and just destroys everybody, doesn't he? There's more balance in the team now. James, Solomon, Aronson's got a bit more. I know he doesn't necessarily stand out, but you and I have had the discussion that the 10 in a Farke team kind of, gives way a bit to the wide players.
Yeah.
Doesn't he? There's a bit more strength in depth. Tanaka's been a good arrival. Rothwell has got lovely experience for a player to come off the bench. Rothwell might even take the shirt for the rest of the season. I always remember in 18-19, Farke's central midfield for Norwich, I think like Tribal and McLean got in, which is kind of the equivalent of Tanaka and Rothwell, and he just went with them for the end of the season. So there's a chance it might be Rothwell. I mean, Archie Gray was amazing, but you have a real fullback, right back now as well. I think I understand why you would ask the question, but I don't agree with the premise of asking the question, if you know what I mean. I think there's enough differences.
Yeah, of course. And I guess the big sort of bite back when you look at it as well, Ben, it's Burnley have still got to play Sheffield United. Burnley have still got to play Coventry. Sheffield United have still got to play Coventry. Sheffield United have got that Steel City derby as well coming up in 4 or 5 games, which is massive. I want to hark on the side of caution, of course, but it does feel like when you're looking at the games that Leeds have left, I mean, do you subscribe to the notion of, well, the bottom 10, 11, 12 teams start turning into sort of almost like top 6, 7, 8 form sides towards the back end of the season? I mean, me and you've watched the Championship for long enough. We know that can be the case, but I guess if your squad and your quality and your caliber is good enough and your mental state is good enough, you should be able to get over the line in those situations.
Yeah, I can't argue against the historical data, Connor, which clearly says people don't like the likes of you and I talking about the beach at the end of the season. But guys, it exists because you get a disproportionate trend up from the teams towards the bottom and a trend down. The only thing I would caveat that with is, what if we get the scenario where there's a high tide and a couple of teams get loose, then, down at the bottom and they're gone before,
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Then that takes a bit of the kind of intensity out of it. But
especially, Ben, when you're looking at like maybe Cardiff at 36, if Cardiff get, let's say, another win this weekend, Luton don't pick up all 3 points against, I believe it's
Burnley away.
Burnley away. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, I mean, you potentially, obviously, if Hull get a decent result as well, you may be looking at sort of 7-8 points there. It's done, isn't it? It's too much.
And that removes your horrible fear that you're going away somewhere 3 games for the end of the season and they are going to fight you with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But the point should stand is that Leeds are still better than these teams. They've still got a better squad, a better manager, having a better season, a better pattern of play, regardless of the situation. I get it's a uniquely intense club. And I totally agree with what Farker said last season as well, that those last 6 games, it is so hard to win compared to when you're churning it out in December or whatever, and you're happily winning, game after game after game. When the scrutiny goes, and I see the comments, all the games are on Sky, all the games are at weird times.
Ben, I think we've got one 3 p.m. game coming up in about 10 games. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It's not ridiculous if I'm working for Sky and I want the highest viewership on all the games. Of course, I'm going to put blooming Leeds and Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday and whoever on a derby all the time. So it is what it is. You take the compliment that people want to watch Leeds on the box, and take the extra TV money. I know the Leeds fans will come back and say, if we had our own channel, we'd make it on commercials and we'd make it on that and screw Sky. But you want 100 million quid when you're up, don't you? So, I can see that, but it feels, Connor, honestly, like rather than genuinely thinking stuff's going to trip you up, you're objectively looking for tripwires to think, will that trip us up, rather than I'm terrified of this, which is you're never going to be 100% confident unless you're 10 points clear already, but I feel you're having to work hard to try and find potholes in this road, yeah?
Ben, you've known me for a while, mate. I normally can be very cautiously optimistic. There's definitely been videos in the past of which I'm a little bit more tentative when it comes to predictions. But this season, I've been very, very positive, mate. Very positive about what I'm seeing, the squad depth, the manager in all effects as well. The ownership, I think it's a really good structure and framework at the club at this moment in time. And I guess that's where it comes back to the conversation of, Leeds fans are arrogant, Leeds fans are this, that, and the other. It's not the case, is it, Ben? It's almost just... It's the case of, if anything, it's the complete opposite. Leeds fans are always the most wary about the running. If there's 3 games to go, we're all extremely nervous about faltering, because there's evidence previously of Leeds Joy Division falling apart again.
Yeah, it's just it's not arrogance. I think it's intensity, isn't it? It's I don't know what the population is, but it's a massive city with one club in it, and you know what that fan base is like as well, and you know what that stadium is like. So yeah, I completely get it, but I think this vibe of having a very chilled out European manager who never celebrates a goal and speaks beautifully in his second language I mean, don't get me wrong. I never understood why Neil Warnock and Leeds wouldn't work together. If you had that charismatic, I'm not saying Farker's not charismatic, but someone like Warnock, where it's all charisma, and I think that would make things worse, don't you?
Yeah, it would. It's like two titans colliding, isn't it? When you sometimes need a bit of a level head. So just in terms of, have you got, just out of interest, have you got Leeds finishing as champions right now?
I've had Leeds finishing as champions all season.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of that second spot, and we'll delve into the playoffs as well, just for a bit of fun. Who are the 3 that go up for you, Ben?
Sounds very boring, but history tells us that whoever misses out of this three at the top is probably going to win the playoffs. Sunderland, my take is that the top four, even though Coventry may be a change in that now, that they could do something in. If Coventry played Sunderland in a playoff semi-final right now, I don't know, feels a bit more of a coin flip than it was. But anyone really want to play Burnley or Sheffield United in the playoffs? No.
No.
So you would feel like, and this is not a lazy answer because they're the top three. This is based on the fact that I have studied this and I can give you the numbers that in the 90s, yes, sixth place can win the playoffs, fifth place sometimes. Just doesn't happen anymore. It's disproportionately third and fourth place. And again, the conversation we had earlier in the show, Conor, about the reason why that is and the financial grounding in that reason. So whoever gets second, third place is going to be hot favourites to win the playoffs.
Definitely. Well, you skirted around absolutely everything without telling me name.
Okay. I almost would quite like to see Sheffield United get second because I feel they've been up against it a bit more than Burnley have squad-wise. And there's a bit of
I'd agree.
They've had a bit of jeopardy, but fair play. If Scott Parker gets a third promotion out of this league, I know people are suspicious. He is just the guy, isn't he? But Conor, you tell me, pick any team and rotate Sheffield United and Burnley into third place. Any team in the league could beat them in, or which team do you think could get close to them in a two-leg playoff? Because I don't think anyone can beat them.
No, I think Sunderland. I think Sunderland. Let's say if it's a Burnley in third place, Sunderland up against West Brom, I actually think there's a fourth versus fifth place game. I think that's actually a really good game.
Lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
Under Mowbray as well, obviously going back up against Sunderland as well, a bit of a narrative there. And West Bromwich Albion have got a little bit of an underrated side. Will Josh Madger be maybe fit and firing, at that point? Obviously, they'll have Jed Wallace back for the running as well. Yeah, I looked at West Brom at the weekend and I thought you're actually a really tidy side and maybe you've been overlooked a little bit, but yeah, and I think they've got better numbers as well since Mowbray's come in to when Corberan went out as well, which I couldn't believe, to be honest with you, with the narrative around Corberan and how well he'd done. But yeah, I would go. I think you're right. I'd go Leeds, although I do think Leeds needs to finish in the automatics. Ben, I do not want to see that. Leeds champions. I'm going to go Sheffield United second, and I think Burnley would win the playoffs. I think you can draw yourself to the final, can't you, Ben? That's what you can do, and I think they've got it in their artillery.
Oh, mate, it's tournament football, and they've got an ungodly good defence. And we saw it a couple of years ago with the game I referenced, where you had this beautiful Middlesbrough team against Mark Robbins. It's like F off, 0-0, 1-0, Wembley. Thank you very, very, very much, Lee. It's interesting because I think, someone correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, Burnley have got an incredible playoff record because I think they've been in it once and they won all the games without conceding a goal. Whereas Leeds hate the playoffs, Sheffield United hate the playoffs, and Sunderland, they all hate the playoffs.
Yeah, and there's psychological matter as well, isn't there? A lot of people don't take it into consideration, but there is psychological matter with this sort of stuff. I mean, you're coming up against Burnley, and in their last two, obviously, I know one was a cup game and they rotated, but they didn't rotate as heavily as Burnley fans were making out. They did rotate, but I still was looking at that squad and I thought it's good enough to beat Preston. And then obviously the game last night against Cardiff, where I thought Cardiff were pretty unlucky, to be honest, not to at least get a second. Maybe, obviously, Bashir Humphries has gone out, hasn't he? And Perez has come in. Maybe there's a little bit of a chink in their armour, but who knows, Ben? I don't know. It just feels like Burnley are going to regain that defensive solidity and just go again. And it's going to be another 55 games without them conceding.
Oh, Conor, I have been to enough playoff games to know that as soon as that league finishes and that tournament football starts, every team, any team, however attacking, you tell me, gets 30% more defensive as soon as it goes. They do. Every team does. I mean, look at Leeds, Norwich. I was there, semi-final first leg. 0-0, get out of Dodge. This was a Leeds team that scored tons of goals and will win the game in the second leg. It's just the way tournament football goes.
Definitely. A few comments. Jay's become, I think you've seen Jay on your channel as well, Ben. Jay says, my two favorite content creators collaborating. Thank you for that, mate. Gainer says, Conor, out of all the content creators, oh, look at this. This man's going to have a smile on his face for the remainder of the evening. Ian Blade says, going to be totally surprised when Conor picks Leeds. Come on, Ben. You know, the only correct answer is, but I mean, just on that, only 3 points, Ben.
If they win it, that's a hell of a managerial job by Wilder, isn't it? With the deduction and the way summer went. So yeah, fair play. They've I think I had them 6th.
Yeah. I had them somewhere around there as well. A draw against West Brom, and some Leeds fans are saying drop Aronson. We've thrown away the league. Farquhar's stubborn, absolutely crazy. I think it's interesting how we've changed a little bit, Ben. In some games, it's been Peru maybe coming into that number 10, and the spearhead has then been facilitated in sort of the last 20% of games against some of the top teams, well, Sheffield United, Sunderland. Joseph has gone up top. He's almost occupied the back 2, which has meant that Perot can almost drop into that number 10 position. And we've seen how devastating he can be just on the outside of the box, just in terms of his technical ability and his striking efficiency as well. And maybe that's a little bit of pragmatism that Daniel Farke can also illustrate in the last maybe 10 to 11 games.
Well, he definitely would have played Bamford if he'd had Bamford. He definitely would have, because as much as Leeds fans are suspicious of Bamford, professional football managers bloody love Patrick Bamford. You know, in the bonkers mad genius Marcelo. Is it Marcello or Marcelo? I don't know which one.
We've always got Marcelo.
Is it a I don't care. I'm from Ipswich. I don't care. But no, you've done it without a striker, and he would arguably have been using somebody else there, and Joseph would have been the choice, wouldn't he? But he's doing a fine job without one. And yeah, you're totally right. You almost wait for that last 20 minutes where Joseph can come in and the game's open up and Pirou can drop back, where I think he is a bit more dangerous. And I'm a football fan. I don't understand pressing as well as all the data guys, but the data guys tell me Pirou doesn't press as well as Joseph or Bamford would. So that's what they say.
Yeah, and there's a reason, sort of, I agree with you. I think there's a reason he started the season with Joseph and kind of maybe wanted a little bit more from Joseph. And then you see in the sort of January period last season, of which I think he kind of got a little bit sick of Peru. And he brought Bamford in that January period. And look, if he was so sure on Joel Peru, he wouldn't have made these changes. He was, Joel Peru is his number 9. I'm not making any changes to this starting 11. That is what it is. Where do you see the picture with him, Ben? Joel Peru, an absolute championship marksman. I maybe question athleticism, physicality. I also maybe question players in this division, if we do get to the Premier League, potentially becoming bench options because of how good that level is. You'll know as an Ipswich fan how different that level is. Jacob Greaves, Jack Clark, Sammy Schmodix. Delap's been an absolute revelation, of course, but players within that side who have struggled to see games out. It's a severe conversation, isn't it, when you're looking at players acclimatizing to that top level with the caliber of, let's say, an Ipswich and their recruitment in the summer?
It's such an unfair conversation as well, Conor, isn't it? Because if we accept that I'm right, that there's a chasm between the Championship and the Premier League, why is it reasonable to expect players who could be on one side of that chasm to be playing in the Championship in the first place? And I get really annoyed when really good Championship teams and Championship players are busting their gut to get up, and people, because the only stone they've got to throw is, oh, let's see how they do in the Premier League. It's like, well, yeah, go figure, mate. There's a blooming Grand Canyon between the quality of the, of course, some of them are not going to be good enough. And that's been amplified by the thing we've talked about 5 times during this show. So, yeah, Peru's probably not going to be a Premier League striker, but that's not his fault. It's just the blooming chasm we've got. Conor, I'm going to have to cut and run in about 2 minutes if we're good to wrap up, fella.
Yes, of course, mate. Of course. So your 3 is presumably Leeds, Burnley, and Sheffield United. Are we going to go with that?
It's the 3 parachute teams at the top of the table. I've got to say, with one of them winning the playoffs. I think Leeds will be champions, and I've been consistent about that.
That's a beautiful thing to end on. Well, Benjamin Bloom, you absolutely fantastic man. We're going to have you on, obviously, toward the back end of the campaign as well. But it's been
for the open top parade. Yeah, you booking me for that? You're not that confident yet, are you?
I'm not going that early yet, mate. But maybe, yeah. But mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. So if you haven't already, and listen, Ben is a superb content creator, and he's always very nice to Leeds as well. He knows what he's doing. But make sure you subscribe to the Benjamin Bloom YouTube channel, everybody, and the link will be in the description below for that. But Ben, thanks so much for joining me, mate. I really appreciate it.
Legend, mate. Absolute pleasure.
And we'll see you in a bit, guys. Cheers.